Previously on the Road to 9.
I am joined at nearly midnight by Adam
Not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion.
The hype leading up to Star Wars The Phantom Menace was unprecedented. After all, this was the biggest movie release around the advent of the internet. The famous Trailer B that Lucasfilm developed for Apple's QuickTime software was how a lot of people watched the trailer in the comfort of their homes. A real first in the dial-up internet age, when loading a tiny video could take practically all night, and the whole process could fall apart if someone picked up the phone at the same time. Something we'll never see again, people paid for tickets to movies they had no intention of sticking around for, just because the trailer was running in front of them, causing box office boosts for The Waterboy, The Siege, and Meet Joe Black. Joining us for our third episode in the Road to 9, we're joined by Alex from Star Wars Explained to talk about the buzz, trials, and tribulations of The Phantom Menace.
About the first time that you watched The Phantom Menace, so tell us about how old you were and I guess what your early memory of going into the cinema for the first time and I guess the general hype surrounding it.
Yeah, I would have been 12 and I saw it not opening night but the day after because I was in 6th grade. We went for a friend's birthday party, and I had like my Jedi robe. I brought one of those little toy lightsabers that you could flick out, and yeah, the hype was huge, and I loved it the first time I saw it. That's all I really remember about it.
Did you see it in the cinema?
I think that was the first time I ever saw cosplayers, actually. Yeah, like I don't think I'd ever seen a single cosplayer. I'd heard of them because, I had dial-up internet and, there were message boards and stuff and people talking about, cosplay groups, cosplay societies. And then I saw like 5 or 6 of them at this cinema and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, people are dressed up as Jedi and there's a stormtrooper, or there was like 3 stormtroopers. And I remember really having to fight to get those tickets as well. Like, I think Mum had to drive us to the cinema.
Yeah, you had to go get them though, didn't you?
Yeah, physically. Yeah. Like, Mum got in the car, drove us 30 minutes to get these tickets. And, and it was for the midnight session.
Amazing.
Yeah, Sean, what about you?
I didn't see it in the cinema.
What?
So I have a bit of a fake
fan.
I know. It gets faker. This is a very, very bad story. So obviously 99, I was 15, and I don't know the exact circumstances. It must have already come out in America, but it hadn't come out in England yet. So I was in Cyprus with a friend of mine and then his family, and we ended up buying it pirated on a VHS that had been filmed in a cinema in America, and we bought like 5 or 6 of them and sold them at school. And that was how I saw it. Me and my mum watched it.
Should we be recording this?
Yeah, no, the statute of limitations has passed. I'm good. So that was how I watched it. Me and my mum, just one night, just put it on and watched it. And it was literally like, it came on, and as it kind of went, Star Wars and all that, you could see people on the TV waving their lightsabers, and you could hear people like cheering and chanting and stuff. It was such a weird experience because I remember the next day going to school, and the people we'd sold the tapes to kind of came up to us and they were like, oh my God, that film was amazing, and this, and everyone was really, really hyped for it. News media was awash with images of fans sleeping on the street waiting for tickets, and shoppers flooding into midnight merchandise launches. Star Wars fever was gripping the world. But then we all know what happened next.
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
The Phantom Menace became a cautionary tale about the dangers of investing in hype. For some, The Phantom Menace was a disaster, a failure of a movie which had killed their childhood and rendered them a laughingstock. Their once proud franchise was now a movie about an amphibious clown and a young Darth Vader who liked to yell, "Yippee!" And I was one of those fans. I wasn't sending death threats to Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd, because I'm obviously not a sentient bag of dog shit, but this movie was embarrassing for me. In 1999, being a geek or being a nerd, it wasn't as popular and as mainstream as it is now. So having a movie that was on one side incredibly slapsticky and silly, and on the other was quite boring and political, it made 15-year-old me just not want to be associated with Star Wars or the saga or the franchise at all. But that's sort of the point, because I was 15. See, when I was 15 and I was in high school, 15-year-old me was pining after a girl who had dumped him 3 years previous and had undiagnosed clinical depression. A movie like this was, well, it wasn't for me. And yeah, that's just the point. It wasn't for me. I guess as you were the youngest one to have seen it out of all of us, I guess that makes you the kid in this situation.
Yeah.
So,
Son, did you see, or were you able to see yourself in the Anakin character?
No, I think I related to Anakin. I mean, I really enjoyed watching him blow up the Trade Federation ship. I didn't really think twice about, how's this child learning how to fly so quickly? Like, I was just into the fun of it. And yeah, it's kind of a kid fantasy, I guess, is like, yeah, I'm going to go up there and fly with the adults and I'm going to save the day. So yeah, I think I did.
What was the buzz like when you left the cinema?
All I remember is us being very happy about it and freaking out and talking about that fight at the end. Like, I don't remember coming out being disappointed at all. And I don't remember any adults around us being confused. Like, I think I do remember reading bad reviews for it before we went in. And when we came out, I recall being like, that was great. I don't understand what the reviews were talking about. And one of the adults was like, oh, they said some similar stuff about the first movies, about how they were all special effects or something. And I was like, okay, whatever. And we just went on talking about how cool Darth Maul was.
There was a bit of a moment, I think, where the buzz kind of hit peak, and then everyone sort of started, I think, maybe reading theforce.net or whatever the hell it was at the time. But like, did that ever catch up to you? Like, did the backlash at that age ever catch up to you, whether it was at the time or maybe later on or anything like that?
Not that I recall. Again, I think I was, maybe that 3-year age difference is just like, in our school, I mean, Star Wars, like, people would make jokes about it, but I never felt like I was picked on for liking Star Wars and sitting and reading Star Wars books at lunch. Like, I don't feel like anyone really dogpiled on the Phantom Menace when we were young, because we were 12. Like, everyone pretty much enjoyed it. And even, like, I was in high school when Attack of the Clones was coming out, and I had people, like, coming up to me, like, popular kids being like, oh, are you excited about the new one? Like, I saw it and I thought the Yoda fight was pretty cool. So, like, I don't know, my whole middle school and high school experience, like, people generally enjoyed Star Wars and didn't find it something to look down upon. And I remember going, like, I went with a bunch of people who I didn't normally hang out with, but we were all like, let's go to the Midnight Revenge of the Sith. And I was, like, the only one. I wore that same Jedi robe that was, like, now much smaller on me, but I was like, whatever. And, like, we all went and we had some jokes about how, like, oh, it's not going to be as good as the originals, but we're going to go see it. And, like, I had fun and they had fun. Like, I don't know. No one really looked down on Star Wars where I went to school.
Well, I went to school in grim as hell North England, so just enjoying something was instantly a weakness. At first, the negative reviews felt like people wanted too much from the thing they had obsessed over for months.
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
Then later becoming more vitriolic as people lashed out at Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd for their roles as Jar Jar Binks and Anakin Skywalker. The Phantom Menace was a gateway movie for children. It was a way to open up the Star Wars galaxy to a new audience and give them the joy that we had when we first sat down and watched A New Hope. And as time went on, the long game behind this movie has become increasingly clear. The fandom is now brimming with positivity towards The Phantom Menace. Younger fans, now adults, rave about their favourite parts and how technically adept it is, and share in how much they loved seeing it for the first time.
Is there anything that really stands out to you as being something that is kind of the unsung hero of the film? Like a moment in it or something, not necessarily your favourite moment, but just something about it that doesn't get enough credit for being just bloody awesome?
Probably, maybe the politics and Padme and seeing Palpatine's plans from the start. I think as a 12-year-old, I was like, oh, that's the Emperor. There was no question about it. We knew his name, so, and I was even surprised that they were even covering up the fact that he was Darth Sidious. Like, come on, guys, they have the same chin. And
Very distinct.
I was just going to say that. It's like, yeah, they cover everything except for one of his most prominent features.
Yeah. So I think the politics get a lot of flack in The Phantom Menace and all the prequels, but I think that was kind of George's way of introducing kids to politics and saying that, it's not all perfect when you grow up. Your leaders aren't always working in your best interests, and I think that's something heavy to try to tackle for a bunch of kids, but I also think it's executed pretty well, and the Galactic Senate is really neat, and I think seeing Padme, again, she's kind of as a young girl, I think they would be very excited to watch a character like Padme the same way young boys would be excited to watch Anakin. So, yeah, I'll go with the politics as the unsung hero of The Phantom Menace.
So, Alex, you put out a video recently going through everyone's, or a fair few contributors' favourite moments in The Phantom Menace. So, I'm not going to ask you what your favourite moment is. I'm going to ask you what your least favourite moment in The Phantom Menace is.
Huh.
And keep in mind, we are, for this watch order, we're going to ask that for every film. This isn't one of those sort of like pile on the prequels thing. Every film is going to have this treatment.
Man, that's a
it
good
is
question.
a perfect movie, so it is hard to find fault.
Yeah.
I don't often think about this, so I don't have a I'm trying to think of just like when I check out while we're rewatching it. Maybe the Gungan Council, when they're negotiating their way into getting the bongo and everything, and Qui-Gon is mind tricking Boss Nass. Yeah, Boss Nass is a little much, but I do like doing the.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably one of my least favourite moments of it. But
I don't think I could think of a least favourite now. You put me on the spot.
No. Well, we put Alex on the spot, and he came up with something, and we just rode his coattails on it. So
true, that's it. Yeah, we were cowards, and it was like, well, I don't want to answer that question. Consider this: when you were young, how many Jar Jar-like characters did you find hilarious? Surely it was quite a few. And then when you played with your toys, how many of you envisioned yourself the king, the queen, the race car driver, or the Jedi? Seeing little Annie Skywalker doing all the stuff he does in The Phantom Menace set off fireworks in the pleasure centers of these new fans, sitting in cinemas around the world. Critically, it could be said that George Lucas didn't make a movie that worked equally as well for adult audiences, veering in such a way that perhaps alienated some of the older audience members, the ones who would go on to hold a grudge against him for 20 years.
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
Now, as a fully grown man,
Debatable.
For argument's sake, as a fully grown man, Alex, has your feelings towards The Phantom Menace changed in any way as, I guess, your cinema literacy has gone up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's evened out. Like, when I was 12, I loved it and thought it was flawless. And then I would say more as I got into college and as I really started to dive into, more film. That's a good way to put it. My film literacy went up and I was watching movies left and right. Like every day I was trying to watch a new movie. And I definitely kind of went through the cynical, like, the prequels suck phase, where so like I started up here and then it kind of dipped down, and then now that I've grown up and I still appreciate it and I remember all the feelings I had when I saw it for the first time, it's evened out, and I'm like, obviously it's not a perfect movie, but there's still so much that I enjoy about it, and I only, looking back on my memories of it, I only have good memories. I can specifically recall laughing at Jar Jar multiple times and which parts. So, yeah, I think it's just evened out to a point where I definitely don't hate it. I would say I love it despite its flaws, even though it's like I said, clearly not a perfect movie, but there's still plenty to enjoy, and there's so many people out there that love it. It was their first Star Wars, and I think that they shouldn't be looked down upon like I think some people used to.
You talked about going through college and having that cynical kind of period, which I think we all had. You know, I think in a certain age bracket, which we're all sort of fitting inside of, I think we all kind of had that prequel cynicism. With everything that's kind of happened in the last, let's call it 2-year kind of period, with the post Last Jedi kind of similar-ish reactions and things like that, and seeing how people have acted towards people like Kelly Marie Tran and Ahmed Best coming out and talking about how he felt, and the struggles that he went through during that time of his life. Has that given you any cause to kind of reflect on that cynical period of your life and maybe, I don't know, rethink, I guess, like your perspective of what you thought of films and the way that you were at that point in your life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it just taught me that, if I don't like something, that's fine. And it just means I'm going to not watch it as often as I watch the other ones. But I just, thank God Twitter didn't exist when I went through that period, because then I might have a lot more to regret. But I didn't really act all that differently back then. I was like, if we were talking about Star Wars, I'd just be like, nah, the prequels weren't as good, and we'd move on. It's not like I spent hours or days online yelling about it, because that wasn't really an option. I mean, YouTube was out, but people weren't using it the way that they're using it now, and there was no Twitter, I don't think, when I was going through this. So there were message boards, but I wasn't really a part of those. And plus I had school to study for, so I was busy.
Something we were thinking about, because obviously just having the rewatch, and for me, the film evened out for the first time. It was one of those things of like, the first time I watched it, where I was like, yeah, I like this. I get this now. I like the bits I like, I dislike the bits I dislike, and so on. And when I sort of watched it and thought to myself, if I was the same age as Jake Lloyd, if the same age as Anakin watching this would be the greatest film of all time. Like, if I was that kid watching it and just being like, that little kid getting to hang around with Jedis and meet Jar Jar and pod race and do all that. And once I sort of had that thing of like, yeah, this movie, I am not the first audience. I'm like 3 audiences back. And then once I sort of thought about it like that, I was like, yeah, I think I can relinquish a bit of the sort of criticisms I have of it and just go along for the ride. And that did it. In the end, it's just a movie, but it's the one that puts everything in motion. Without The Phantom Menace, would Star Wars still be a thing? Would geek fandom be as popularly mainstream as it is today? One could argue that catering towards children took Star Wars off the dusty shelf occupied by their parents' other uncool things, and maybe even paved the way for comic books to now dominate the cinema landscape, something largely unthinkable in the 90s. But whatever your take was then,
I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
or is now, there's one thing all fans can agree on. The Duel of the Fates is still a jam.
We'll handle this.
We'll take the long way.
Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe for more on the road to 9. Hit the bell icon so you're notified about future installments, and if you like what we do, you can support us by heading over to our Patreon and contributing. Even a small amount helps keep us producing content now and into the future.
Blah blah. Blah blah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Motherfucker!